Great, thanks, Sandy. So now we're going to move into our question and answers. As you've noticed, there have been some answers put in the Q&A already during the presentations, but we're going to start with the earliest question first. And we're going to do these question and answers for probably about 10 minutes and then check and see if there are any verbal questions and then go back to the written questions. So just a reminder, you can add questions in the Q&A at any time and raise your hand to get in the queue during the verbal time. If you've joined by phone, use the *9. So the questions are visible to everybody. And we've been doing some assignments among us about who's going to answer. I'm going to start with the first question that was posed, which is from Pedro. The question reads, some organizations in Europe use also the duration of a certain threshold of wind speed. How is the variability of the wind speed considered in these maps? A single average value of the wind speed may be misleading. And I believe this question is for Frank.
Yes, and it's great that I think, since that question came up, you saw a little more from what Andy showed with the monthly wind, but also getting, more directly to your question, we are actually in the process of making a, what did you use? Threshold, that's exactly it, threshold. How many months average above 7 meters per second? How often between 5 and 9 in the evening, are we at that? So just to really get, when is it the most useful? And yes, do we have good winds all the time? So yes, we're absolutely getting at that. It's a good question.
Great, Frank, and you're still up. The second question is from Colleen. How can or will you map vessel traffic for vessels using VMS that travel faster than 5 knots?
Yes, and that gets us to the idea of transiting, and which is also important. So we are doing that. That's part of the process of the data we're creating with VMS, and that will be in there.
Okay, thanks. Whitney, the next question is for you. It's from, I believe it's pronounced Noe. Their question is, now that so much data is easily available, does BOEM have plans to propose call areas in Oregon? If yes, what would be the timeline for auctions and leases? So Bianca, if you want to go to that slide.
Hi, great. Thanks for the question. This was one of our backup slides in case we had a question in terms of potential timeline. So I just wanted to, this is a timeline of the authorization process that brings us to lease to the auction itself and lease issuance. We're currently in this BOEM state planning effort, as I went over in the presentation on the far left, which is that brown box there is about a 1-year effort. The purpose of this effort is to collect this data and information to inform a call. We don't have a timeline for when that call would be, but in terms of our data gathering and engagement effort as outlined in the plan, which is available online, this effort would be culminated with a summary report of the effort, and then call together a task force meeting to discuss the results of this engagement effort. And then after that task force meeting would likely come a call, but beyond the hope for a task force meeting this fall, we don't have any specific timelines.
Great, thank you. The next few questions, Andy, are for you. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at them in the Q&A. The first one's from Marjorie. For the Oregon speaker, can you pull up and display data from different time frames in order to compare them? For example, any changes in prime fishing grounds in 2000, 2010, and 2020 or other species?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I demonstrated in, I think, my portion of the presentation, the existing time slices for the different fisheries data that is currently available. So you can quickly get to a time slice for a specific fishery, like a hook and line fishery or a pot fishery. Those are all dependent upon whether or not they are available from the NOAA research office that has provided those data themselves. But when they do exist along those time slices, you can very quickly choose to turn them on and off in the data viewer, overlay them, or make them transparent so that you can understand the difference between one and the other. Again, that is limited by the data source providers. The Oregon fisheries data products specifically, those that are organized by port or by state, because there were some statewide products that were generated. Those asked the fishermen to participate in a mapping exercise where they, over the lifetime of their experience, where they would place value on specific geographies in the ocean. And then those were individual fishermen's responses were aggregated with the response from their peers in their communities, or at the statewide level, to produce a map that basically summarized across the port or across the state the importance during their lifetime as a fisherman. So those are single time products relating to the lifetime of that fisherman's experience. And those were produced in 2011. So they're now becoming a little dated.
Thanks. The next three questions are still for you, Andy. The next one's from Christine. Is there a way to get to metadata?
Yes, Christine, thank you for asking that. There are metadata links in the catalog. You can look at the, for any specific record that's there, there's an option to view HTML or XML, which are the different kinds of reporting formats that the GeoPortal system provides. We're actually working to make sure that the GeoPortal 2.0 is pulling the right fields and providing the right information. So in some instances, we're still making tweaks to how that is there. But the metadata should be available through links to those service providers and their catalogs that you can get to.
All right, and then from Shiloh, also for you, Andy, are seabird nesting locations provided in the catalog?
Yes, they are. If you look for seabirds in OROWindMap, there is a colony data layer that provides relative ecological importance information, and that has been provided by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as part of their ongoing management of the Oregon Islands National Wildlife Refuge. So that data is present. It's called Seabird Colony Relative Ecological Importance, and you can find it in the birds portion of the catalog.
Great. The next question is for all the panelists, and it is from Aaron, who asks, will any of the speakers be attending the IPF 2021 in Richmond, Virginia this year in August?
I have not made any plans to do so at this time.
And Frank, Whitney?
Do not know. I have not made any plans, but let's face it, everything will also be COVID dependent.
Yeah, same response. Thank you.
Next question is from Angie, and I'm not quite sure who to punt this one to. I'll read it and you folks can think about it. The spatial footprint of wind farms is fairly large, and from what I've read, excludes fishing vessels within the space. How are you working with small boat vessels to ensure you're not affecting them? We wouldn't want to negatively impact Oregon's coastal economy to provide energy to California. Is this a Frank question, perhaps?
That's more a fisheries outreach question than a data creation question. So all I can say is there's definitely fishery outreach will be going on. I'm working on the side of creating the VMS data set.
Whitney, anything to add?
Yeah, echoing Frank's response, certainly if there are folks that have some input on this planning process, we'd love to hear from you directly or to follow up on. So The point of this effort is to solicit any feedback for this planning process of all along the coast of Oregon, and I welcome a follow-up conversation with the person who posed the question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then we have a comment from Don Stover. Northwest Carpenters Union would like to be a supporting organization of this renewable energy and be involved where the organization can both politically support BOEM and support of its infrastructure build. So to Don, I would say it'd be great if they could put their contact information, send that to us, and we'll be sure to include them in the interested parties. Whitney, anything more to add there?
Not right now, but we do have a link at the end of our presentation for those that want to sign up for any updates and track our progress. So that'll go to all the participants.
Great, thank you. Andy, this next question's for you from Delia. Thanks for the information. Do you have an estimated timeline for the data review working group?
Only a general one, and that I believe it will be late spring, early summer. And then I think I'm on the next question as well. If you do notice a layer that is not loading, it says error loading layer. If you could click the help icon at the bottom left of the page or the bottom of the portal and let us know which layer is not working, then we can see if we can address that right away, whether the service still exists, and try and fix that. So that's something the administrators of the system would need to do.
Question, this one is for Whitney from Bob. How does BOEM plan to share this tool for increased use by stakeholders to inform the leasing task force members?
Bob, thanks for the question. I'm not sure if I fully understand. This tool is, I'm in a room where all the lights just went out. Sorry about that. This tool is publicly available, and really this webinar today is sort of our full presentation to the public and to the task force. The task force is aware of OROWindMap as I communicate to them regularly, and hope that not only that it's used now for this data gathering effort, but this tool is continued to be used throughout the BOEM authorization process, after the call with the wind energy areas, through leasing all the way up to the construction operations plan. This is a wonderful tool to provide public access to the best available data.
Great, thanks, Whitney. And they've got a couple more questions here, but while I ask the last two, if there is anybody that would like to ask a verbal question, go ahead and raise your hand, and so that we can get you in the queue. We've just got a couple minutes to allow for some verbal questions as well. David asks, what is the time frame of the data catalog review?
Yeah, so once we start in late spring or early summer, we need to conclude that effort by fall so that any results from that effort can be incorporated into our report for the task force later in the fall.
All right, thank you. Looks like Liz says the link for the slides takes us to a page not found. I'm going to ask for Bianca to check that link and put it in the chat to all panelists and participants and attendees to make sure that everybody has the link that's working. Okay, and then one more question here from Don. Who are the contacts to speak with about ensuring strong labor standards on these projects?
I can take that question. Thank you. Thanks, Don, for the question. Where we are right now in planning is really to identify the best potential sites for leasing and potential development, and through the planning process beyond at or after lease issuance is to a specific developer and that developer's plans. And so if you're referring to labor standards that would influence the planning process on the front end of potential siting, now is the time, and please contact me. And if your question is more related to a specific project, the answer would be coming soon, and still contact me, and I'll make sure that you're informed when we're at that stage of the process.
Great, thank you, Whitney. And I did ask for anyone who wanted to ask a question verbally to raise their hand. We don't have any hands raised at this time. Let's see. Abigail says they still have difficulty opening a link. So again, we'll have Bianca check on that and make sure that we have the right link in for all the panelists and attendees so that you have the right information. So still not seeing any hands raised, and no more questions are coming in through the Q&A. We're at 11:25, so I think at this point, Whitney, let's see, there is one, Abigail. Abigail, I just unmuted you. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say the reason the links aren't working, I noticed that the sentence punctuation is included in some of the links. So if people take off the comma or the period from the links will work.
Great, thanks, Abigail. And then I just see that Bianca put in the link into all panelists and attendees, so you should have a live link there. All right, there is another question here from Marjorie. Didn't BOEM issue some sort of labor standards agreement with one of the offshore wind developers? She has some recollection of that. I don't know.
Marjorie, I'll take the first stab at that. I'll have to follow up. If there was a labor standards agreement with one of the offshore wind developers, it was on the East Coast, and I'm representing the Pacific office. So let me check in with colleagues, and I'll follow up with you directly.
Okay. So with that, Whitney, it looks like we are at our next step slides for you to take it from there.
Great.